Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happens YouTube Atheist Community and Tiny Chat's Fun. So anyway, last night was serviceable. I've had a bit of a, I don't know, for no good reason, not feeling very well period. Yeah, I don't have any explanation. Just a biological thing, something with my biology that I find disagreeable. And, you know, it just puts me in a mood. Yes, like you. Who's making all that racket? People making racket. I never hear any racket. It's coming from way over there. Anyway, it's lovely, isn't it? Lovely, 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 blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, the cat's been properly scared off by the other cat and such. Anyway, sorry, I guess you probably don't need this tour thing, but I'm here. So last night, I guess the outstanding moment, I had some conversation with Mr. Natural for a good deal of the evening, which was nice, and but Das Spook showed up, and we had a quite civil and decent conversation. Both of us, I think, making a decent effort to not push buttons, not, too hard, and so we did quite well, actually. It was just nice to, I like Das Spook at my core. We have some commonality in life experience and perception, and it's just unfortunate that the truth gets in the way, kind of thing. But, it happens with a lot of people. Which sort of brings me to the Modern Mystic. He just made a video I'll probably make some kind of reply to, I think. I'd like to construct something. But one of these rather glib style videos, again, glibophile might be my new term, because I see this as the real corrosive element in, again, it's not so much what you know. It's like you don't need to know a lot to understand life. You just have to avoid the bullshit. And his video was basically a endorsement of a kind of bullshit as a foundation for existence. I don't even know. Endorsement is probably the wrong word. He's just basically saying this is how people live, and this may be true. But I clearly would argue that this is a fundamental underutilization of your humanity if you are acclimating to some environment and you live in, baseball town, and so you become a baseball guy, or you live in football town, you become a football guy. To me, you might as well just throw the value of intelligence in the garbage. Certainly, I'm also going to argue a very simple fact that the value of your existence, whether or not you were a success or a failure, is not measured in how you felt while you lived. Value isn't measured by what you have owned in the world, what you possess at the time of your death. The real value is what you did to the people living in the world. How did you impact them? And that's part of the qualitative definition of a life well lived, is how many other lives did you help get well lived. So that brings me to Darwin Hamster video, a new video from him. Been very nice to see him again, Joe, and talking about the premises and the difficulty of attempting conversation with people when they say, I accept that for the sake of argument, and they're not accepting it for the sake of the argument. You can't even have the theoretical argument in that circumstance where certain premises are, not agreed upon. And, these basic premises that me saying the word ouch is substantially different than me feeling ouch. When you have to go that deep into the begging process to get somebody to accept the fact that fundamental, is you can't get more waste of time, than attempting conversation in an environment where you have to work that hard for that little a concession to what seems an intractably, logically, rationally, reasonably undeniable fact of existence, that being a sentient and being a dead tree, being conscious and feeling, is quite substantially different. These dead trees aren't doing anything like what I'm doing. Nothing even remotely close to it. That this difference is substantial and significant. Like I said, having to argue that as a premise, I think it can be argument, and unlike Darwin's hamster, I would say that the decisive trial evidence can be presented, and there's just not much you can do with a judge or a jury that is bigoted. So a judge or a jury bigoted against realization of the truth doesn't reflect, in my opinion, badly on the truth. So just to deal with a side thing that Darwin's hamster brought up, that was clearly directed at me, but he didn't. He was very polite and not pointing a finger. Is this? It's just kind of funny that he added this on, but it's an interesting conversation about whether or not people who, generally speaking, have heart attacks shoveling snow, whether these were people that are going to die anyway in a week or 2 weeks or 6 months. And I certainly would argue that they weren't. Most of these people weren't profoundly stressed and then had a heart attack because of a profound amount of stress. It's that they, indulged in a minor amount of stress that just revealed a heart condition they were building anyway. The plaque was already there. The clots were already ready to fly off. And the stress, just the minor amount of stress, just revealed a disease well on its way to killing them by making their stress level lower and lower and lower every day. The level of stress that would knock them off becomes less and less as their disease becomes worse and worse. So you have that factor, plus the factor that, yes, eventually they'll be constipated, try too hard to take a shit and have a heart attack. So I'm just saying that, yes, maybe there are cases, I would call them maybe exceptional cases, not routine cases, where the individual who has a heart attack shoveling snow would have lived 5 years, and it was just that they way overstressed themselves shoveling snow. So I guess that would be the argument, is, where in the process of shoveling snow do these heart attack victims have their heart attack? Is it worth the first shovel, or is it the 900th shovelful? And I suppose I would argue, that it's more the former than the latter. The latter? Close enough. So anyway, that was sort of an interesting little add-on. Not a significant or important point, but I suppose important in the sense that if we're going to say stuff, what we're saying should have credibility across the entire plane, and maybe I will concede that I might overstate that point when I make it as a point, and that perhaps there are some people who are denied good years of life they would have had they not heart attacked while shoveling snow. But I think most of them, I think they were, the plaque was on its way, so they were doomed, and it was just a matter of a tiny straw that broke their hearts back. But anyway, back to the glib. Yeah, and that's the real, there's two kinds of people. People living selfish lives, with a viewpoint closed to the subjective feeling self, applying their brain as nothing else but a scheming tool to get. And then there's people who expand their mind, use their intelligence to display a bigger world. So I don't see green and trees and sky. I see evolution in every tree. I see struggle and attrition in the death of designs. I see much more of a game being played, and then of course I see the context of billions of other human sentients doing just as I am, struggling to comfort their own bag of sensibilities, and that there's no efficiency in this projection that my comfort is more valuable than someone else's, and that creates the other observation of a word like efficiency. So I look, and the word efficiency oozes from my perception. My brain, my intellect, puts that word there, and I understand the importance. It's an important word, efficiency. It rolls through, and it says, if I'm extravagant and obtuse, and let's see, what's the right word? If I'm high maintenance, if my comfort is too expensive or very expensive, then it's too expensive. Then I become, something that's going to be denying the resources I will waste for my comfort. Could give comfort much more efficiently to a bag of other sentience. And these are real facts of our life. And I'm not saying you have to blow your brains out over it. I'm saying acknowledging it, that us first worlders are not living very efficient lives. We're not getting much bang for our consciousness buck by comparison to the other people in the world who are allocated much less resource and can produce much more lifing for the price. So we do consume welfares with any measure of gluttony we're guilty of. And that's the reality of the game, the big game we're playing. So, I can concede that in the Mystic's video he did use the phrase like, well, unless you have some other meta concept, or unless you have some mission from God, or whoever, or whatever, then yes, you just settle into this silly, myopic, narrow perspective view, live your selfish life for your selfish gain, and say, I've done all I need to do. Clearly, this is the activity of a small-brained creature. I don't wish to necessarily state the mystic is such a creature, but he certainly, I don't think he lives his own diagnosis of a human being. I think his own life is measured by more creative standards than that. His own sense of satisfaction with himself is likely has a higher standard. But it doesn't really matter, because he's defending, in a way, an approach that is small-brained, small human, just it's very ignorant, very, very crude in terms of adding no extra value words to the experience of your life, not recognizing the real value is in your functional capacities to do things in this world, to alleviate suffering, harm, to comfort clearly sentient minds of equal value weight to your own. So the equal value weight thing I'm emphasizing just because it's a concept that Darwin Hamster uses as an example, one that he thinks is, generally speaking, agreeable, that your happiness is not more pleasant, a better expression of the game than somebody else's comfort. The comfort in and of itself is the value, and the reciprocal causing harm or suffering is the enemy. And it doesn't really matter where it manifests. It only matters that it does manifest. And it is a reflection on all of our performance if we allow too much of it to manifest, and especially if we allow it to manifest in clearly disproportional and advantageous ways where we don't have to feel their pain and we, even though we cause it in a way. That kind of the less than reputable activities that have created the circumstance of poor performance in terms of our functional efficiency in achieving comfort is largely due to a short-sightedness. You could always, the cliche example being the deficit spending, the huge debt that a bunch of families, a bunch of people with kids, people invested in the future, have piled on to those children. This idea that, this borrow your way to a better future on the labor and liability that you will not pay back and that you will leave as a inheritance to the new model that will have to struggle with that quite cumbersome burden strapped on their back. Clearly the dissident, the conscious conflict, the rational incompatibility of this professed love for the welfare of the future and this activity of enslavement demonstrate that these two statements, at least one of these statements, I love my children, and debt's okay or something, is not, they're not compatible, because it's the same as saying I love my children, slavery will be good for them. That's nonsensical. It's insanely nonsensical. And I guess that's, as is the point of most of my videos, it's the point of this video. That we're living in an imbecilocracy, and people are dumb and small-minded, seeing very small pictures of the universe, and it is unfortunate that the intellectuals are often embracing and endorsing the insipid, foolish, low-brained, small-minded behavior of the common man. Maybe because they need something emotionally, or they find it more comforting and easy to get through their life by not being too controversial, not making too many enemies in high or low places. Being bits of coward, I would say. Yeah, because I'd almost say some of these people, I would say, are too smart to believe their own bullshit, to believe that the game of life is best played from a selfish, small-minded perspective. If the mystic believes that, then I will call him appropriately a bit of an idiot.